In this lesson, we're going to answer the question, how can I add integers? We're going to do this in two ways. One, we're going to use a number line. Ta-da! And the second way, we'll use some counters to show how to add them. So say you're going to add integers, like say you're going to do like 2 plus 3. Well, you'd start at 0, and you'd go to 2, 1, 2. And then you'd be like, okay, I'm at 2. Now I need to do 3 more. And you go out 3 more. And you're at 5. And so you know that 2 plus 3 equals 5. Well, in this lesson, we're going to look at it like, oh no, what if one of these numbers is negative? How do we deal with that? Or what if both of the numbers are negative? How do we add integers that are not just positive? So that's what we're going to look at. To start that, we'll come down here and we'll look first at this problem here. It says 7 more than 9. 7 more than negative 9. So we come back over here. We're going to come down here in the number line. We're going to pinpoint negative 9. So here's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here would be negative 9. So basically, we'll start there at negative 9. And we need to go 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's when we make this move here. So we're doing like negative 9 plus 7. And that would be written like this. Negative 9 plus 7. And we end up here at this point on the number line. So when we look at the number line, now we see 0. And we go back 1, it's negative 1, negative 2. So, negative 9 plus 7 equals negative 2. Let's look at this other one, 10 more than negative 8. So in this case, we will come into this number line. We're at negative 8 is where we're starting, and we're doing 10 more. So here's negative 8, okay? I can jump here, that's 3. Jump 5 more, that's going to be 8. And then I jump 9, 10. So, zoom out a little bit. We started at negative 8. We then went all the way to here. And we went plus 10. 10 more. Then negative 8. We ended here. If you look at our number line, there's you can see 0. You're at 1, 1, 2. So the answer would be 2. So when we come back here and we look at, it's positive 2. 10 more than negative 8, and or negative 8 plus 10 equals positive 2. Notice that, like, in this one, when you have the negative number and the positive number is bigger than the negative number, like in terms of their like absolute values, so the distance from 0, so like the absolute value of negative 8, the absolute value of negative 8 equals 8, and the absolute value of 10 equals 10. So the one with the larger absolute value determines what the final sign is. In this case, it's negative 2, and up here, in this case, it's positive 2. Sorry, I misspoke. And up here, we can see that negative 9, the absolute value of negative 9 equals 9, and the absolute value of 7 is going to equal 7. 9 is greater than 7, so then 9 was negative, so at the end we end up with a negative number. Okay, 10 less than 6. So in this example, we're actually going to start on the positive side of the number line. And we're going to start at 6. So we start here at 6. And we're doing 10 less than. So in this case, we're going to point backwards. Going backwards 10. Let's zoom in so I can show that better. So backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've gone backwards 10. We're right here. That is, starting at 0, we're going negative 1, 2, 3, 4. So our answer would be negative 4. And in this case, the way you look at the word less is actually really saying that we're doing 6 plus negative 10. In which case your absolute value would be 10, and your absolute value would be 6, meaning our answer is going to be negative because 10 is a higher absolute value. Our answer will be negative, and our answer will be negative 4, as we also illustrated on the number line. Let's do 2 more and kind of look at the differences in these 2 problems here. You can see the 2 of them. It's negative 3 plus 7 and 3 plus negative 7. So in the top one, we're going to start at negative 3, and then we're going to go adding 7. So we start here at negative 3, and we have to add 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're right here. If we look and compare to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the answer would be 4, positive 4. So we come over here, we know it equals positive 4 based on the number line. Also, if you do the absolute value of negative 3, it's 3, and the absolute value of 7 is 7. And we know that since 7 is larger than 3, the answer should be a positive number. In this case, we can even pre-analyze this one. Absolute value of 3 is going to be 3, and the absolute value of negative 7 will be 7, which means my answer should end up being negative, because the negative 7 is the larger integer, is the larger absolute value. Not necessarily a larger integer. Negative 7 is actually much smaller than negative 3. But anyways, we'll come over here, and we will start out at 3 and add negative 7. So I'm going backwards 7. So here's 3. And now we have to go negative 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So we go back 7. Now compare to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 away from 0, so it's negative 4. And again, the absolute value of this would be 4, because it's 4 away from 0. So our answer is negative, like we had said before. B4, and negative 4. Haha, get it, B4. Alright, so this is how to, back to our question, how can I add integers? I just showed you how to add integers using the number line. Alright, now I want to still answer that same question, how can I add integers? But I want to show you it using like the counter strategy. For this case, in this case, I'm going to draw the counters. I'm going to use red to show negative numbers and black to show positive numbers. So in this case, we start out with 3 plus negative 3. So that means that the black would be 3 positives. I'll put a plus in the middle. 1, 2, 3. And this is positive 3. And then I can put in the red counters, and I can do 1, 2, 3. And what you need to know here is you need to know that there's a thing called the additive inverse, which means when you have one positive and one negative, that equals 0. So in this case, these two kind of cancel out, equals 0. And then let's circle this positive and this negative, and that's going to equal 0. And this one will equal 0. So you have 0, 0, 0, and there's nothing left that's like not circled. So our sum here in this case is actually 3 plus negative 3 is equal to 0. And that's what we call the additive inverse. Right here, the additive inverse property of addition is when you add two numbers with the same absolute value, but one is positive and one is negative, you get 0. In this case, 3 and negative 3 would both be the absolute value of 3, and when you add them together, you get 0. Now we do 5 plus 8, and this is kind of like, oh, this is easy. I've seen this one before, but let's just like show you the counters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we need to add 8. So I have some more space over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Count them all up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Our sum is 13. Hopefully you knew that before I got there. Now let's go to the same problem, except now we have negative 8 instead of positive 8. And I just want to make sure you can see that little comparison there. So we started with a positive 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we go on to the negative counters. So we need 8 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're doing this with like actual counters, I would almost just line them up next to each other. It's a little bit easier to work with. I'm kind of not doing this. So like here, these ones would be 0, so you kind of get rid of them. This one and this one would be 0. 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 And what we're left with here is 3. They're left with negative 3. There are 3 negative counters, which means 5 plus negative 8 is going to equal negative 3. And that would be the sum of those two numbers. This is the way using the counters. Moving on, I want to kind of just quickly go over some of these properties of addition to review them with you. So we talked about the additive inverse. When you add a number to like the negative version of itself, you get the 0. We have the identity property of addition. That's when you add something to 0, you get itself. So like n plus 0 equals n. Sorry about that. I got interrupted in the middle of recording, so hopefully this video still makes some sense. So n plus 0 equals n, and that's the identity property. Whenever you add a number to 0, you get that same number back. That's why I used n, because n can mean any number. Commutative property of addition and associative property of addition are somewhat similar. So the commutative property says like n plus, let's say n plus z equals, I'll do z plus n. Usually I think that you do a plus b equals b plus a. Should be b. So the order doesn't matter. I can add in any way. How this would relate to like negatives and positives would be like 5 plus negative 8 equals negative 8 plus 5. And I just want to point out that I notate this like negative 8 here with the parentheses so it doesn't get confused as like a minus sign with the addition there. All right. Now the associative property is where you have groupings. So that's where you have A plus B plus C, right? And you maybe have parentheses to do B plus C first. So what this means, though, is with the associative property, you could also say this. It's the same thing as saying A plus B plus C and adding A and B first. And it doesn't matter what order you add them in, your sum will always be the same. Even if, say, you have like some positive and negatives mixed in there, you'll still end up with the same sum. And that's what the associative property says. Finally, in this video where we're talking about how can we add integers, I just want to go over a few rules and talk about them. So, a few rules. Let's get a cool pointer here. A few rules. Alright, on a number line, when adding a positive integer, you move to the right. So when you're adding and you have a positive, you go to the right. On a number line, when adding a negative integer, you go to the left. So like I'm at 5 and I add negative 8, I go left. When adding two positive integers, the sign of the sum is positive. This is the addition you've probably been doing all of your educational career, is adding two positive integers. When adding two negative integers, the sign of the sum is negative. So when you have two negative integers and you add them together, like if I have negative 3 and then I add negative 5, I'm just going back further. So my sum's still going to be negative. I'm not going to get to a positive. Now this is what I was talking about with the absolute values. When adding a positive to a negative integer, the sign of the sum is the sign of the number that is the greatest distance from 0 on the number line, which is your absolute value, the greatest distance from 0. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example that's kind of complicated with some numbers, with some letters. So, say you have like negative 7 plus n equals a, all right? Now, I want to know, is a going to be positive or negative? Well, if I told you that n had an absolute value that was greater than 7, so if I told you that the absolute value of n was greater than 7, then that means that A is going to be positive if n is positive. If n is negative, A will be negative. But if n is positive and the absolute value of n equals 7, then A will end up being a positive. If the absolute value of n, say I told you that n was positive and the absolute value of n was less than 7, that would mean that A would end up being negative. So I just wanted to quickly go over a couple of rules there. And now you should know how to add integers.